So today I have an updated White Forest Ryzeal deck profile. I wanted to address some of the comments I got on my last video and tweak the ratios, explain why I've changed the ratios. This is not a budget version of the deck. And then show you some actual gameplay commentary and talk about my thoughts for how good this deck actually is in Crossover Breakers format, because Supreme Darkness isn't out yet, so we don't have Azamina LZ and friends. Okay, first of all, some people have said you're already playing more than 10 power spells, why not just play hand traps at this point? If you have ever played with or against Ryzeal, you know that you need like at least 18 hand traps to have a chance of having a typical hand where you can stop them. In fact, drawing a single power spell, like an Eclipse for example, or a Talents, to eclipse their detonator or Talents take their detonator, typically does nothing because the plugin will just bring back the detonator, which has popped itself in response to your power spell. So you'll often find that you want to have 2 power spells, and I feel like the 12 that I have here, so 10 in the bottom row and 2 more here, is the absolute lower bound, and maybe I want a little bit more. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that people didn't like that I was playing 3 tank last time. I think this card is surprisingly underappreciated, because if you played the Azamina stuff, so like the wanted package with the witch, it never mattered that the tank was a level 4, you just cared that the witch could send a toy card and would trigger it. But now it's a very, very big deal that this is a level 4, because it makes it so much easier to go into stuff like Duo Drive or the Star Liege card. The only card that is locked into Ryzeal monsters is the Ryzeal Detonator. That requires 2+ level 4 Ryzeal monsters, but none of the other cards do. So I actually feel like 1 tank is probably incorrect, and I think I want to play at least 2. Another couple things in here that I'm thinking about that I'm not sure about is the cross and the plugin are bricks. You don't want to draw these cards, and also your Ryzeal count is slightly lower than in a normal Ryzeal deck, because most Ryzeal decks would play 3 sword and then they would also have a node. So the chance of you being able to use a plugin as an extender is a little bit higher, or the chance of you being able to resolve cross for a draw and not hurt yourself by shuffling all of your Ryzeal cards in the grave, like to be able to use plugin on, for example, it's just like a little bit different. Going second, the cross is a brick, plugin is a brick, and woes is a brick. Woes is not a brick going first, but you don't want to draw cross or plugin on either side of the dice roll. You can still make the full board with Duo Drive and Detonator without these cards, but these drastically increase the ceiling. So you could consider siding these for going first. I don't really know if there's a correct answer to this, but you are accepting, more ceiling for more bricks if you do main these cards. Lastly, I do not like a Stellar. I think this is the worst White Forest card in the entire deck because it uses your normal summon, and it is not required for the typical Diabell ladder unless you are unlucky and don't draw a single toy card. If you draw either box or soldier or tank, which would be the clear majority of games if you were on 3 tank, you'll see in some of the gameplay that comes up that you never ever need this card. Ryzeal is really the star of the show. The only reason that LZ is better is because LZ searches Ryzeal, which makes it a +1, but this is a level 4 that triggers your toy cards, which gives you more level 4s to be able to go into stuff like Star Liege to protect your Duo Drive or the Duo Drive itself. Lastly, I want to mention that Donner has more value in this deck than in a typical Ryzeal deck, because normally you use this because you have nibbed your opponent or they have nibbed you, and you need to clear your non-level / rank 4s from your own board so that your Ryzeal monsters can fully activate. For example, X Ryzeal says if this card is normal or special summoned and you control no other face-up monsters except level / rank 4 monsters, you can add a Fire Thunder from your deck to your hand, which is Sword. So in your typical combo, you're going to make the Diabell first, and then you are going to summon these cards, and that means you are not going to get the search for the sword. Now this doesn't really matter, and your combo isn't like really noticeably worse because of it, but you do need to be aware of those restrictions. The other thing I want to remind everyone of is that this card is basically Black Witch, but the Ryzeal version as far as the toy cards are concerned. You can special summon this card from your hand by sending a card from your hand or field to the grave, and this triggers the toy cards. That's one of the reasons why I think playing a higher number of toy cards, like with more tanks, is very, very good. Now, obviously, this only gets the effect if it is normal summoned, but you will see in many cases it doesn't even matter, and you often don't need to normal summon this card. It really just depends on what your hand is, and if you have to normal summon a White Forest card versus if you can save it for your ice. I don't think I have too many other things to cover. Rafflesia is useful because Gravediggers protects you from Nib or Droll if you do it early, and it also works with the Ryzeal Plasma Hole, but I would not be putting this in the main because it's another brick, so that's really like a side card in my opinion. Okay, now let me go over some of the gameplay. First of all, let me show you playing through hand traps. So if you draw a pretty good hand like Box and LZ and not a Ryzeal card, what this means is we have one power spell, we have a toy card, and we have a White Forest card. So this is a statistically normal hand. If we also had a Ryzeal card, it would also be a statistically normal hand. Same as if we had a second power spell instead of just one. So this is really not particularly unusual, although drawing the Box specifically with LZ is obviously the best case scenario. So here we LZ send the Soldier, and the Soldier brings itself back. The opponent will chain Mourner here, and what I should mention is if you start your turn like this, your opponent has no reason of suspecting that you were not on White Forest Pure. In fact, if you were on just the Azamina stuff, which in Crossover Breakers is basically still pure because you don't have Azamina LZ, you're not playing Snake Eyes and any of that other stuff, your opponent maybe thinks that you don't have access to the Witch, otherwise you might have started that way because you had the Box. So Mournering the Soldier maybe seems like a solid play because you don't have access to like searching a Sylvie maybe. So this is like an okay hand trap, but it's not amazing. It also tells me that they don't have Ash because if they were going to hand trap me early like they did with Ghost Mourner, they would have Ash the LZ. So them not having Ash is very, very important information, as you will see later on in this duel. So, okay, here I summon the Rusia and I send the Tails. We still have access to Arciela in the extra deck to send a tank, so we're not worried about not being able to get tank in the grave and then onto the field. So here the Tails resets itself, we make the Arciela, and that sends the tank, and here we get Veilered. Now, what this tells me is that the opponent probably thinks that I am desperately searching for a Woes, because there's no reason to read that I've drawn it, and it's at 1, so I almost certainly haven't drawn it anyhow. So he probably thinks that he can't stop me from getting Diabel, because with everything that's known right now, the tank can easily come back. Because I have Box, it can special the LZ from grave, and I can make Diabel. But I won't be able to search the Woes. So that's, I'm just kind of guessing about the thought process there. Tank comes back. Here I activate Tails, and I search for the Esteller. Now, keep in mind, even if I didn't have the Box, you still don't have to play Esteller, because you could have just searched another LZ with the tank instead of Esteller, and then the tank would have specialed the second LZ, and then you would go into the Diabel anyhow. So the reason that you would play Esteller, or kind of like the ceiling increase, is really this exact scenario where I still don't want to show that I'm playing Ryzeal, and I have one more play before I have to go into the Ryzeal stuff, and that is Esteller send something. So here he activates Imperm. Again, remember, if this resolves, this will bring out the Sylvie, which I have not used yet, and the Sylvie can search for the Woes. So I can really only assume at this point that he's very much afraid of the Woes, and so that resolves, but now I still have the materials to go into a Diabel. So here I make the Diabel and I add back the Tails, which means that my resource economy is looking excellent because I can send this instead of my Box or instead of my power spell in my opponent's turn. The only reason why I wouldn't want to do that is if I had drawn Goat specifically, and then I wouldn't mind sending that off of Diabel. So here my opponent has used 3 hand traps, which is now getting to the territory of like what you have to hand trap Ryzeal with if you want a chance to win. And I haven't gone into the Ryzeal cards yet. Now, what I do here is worth talking about. So I summon the Rusia by sending the Arciela back to my extra deck. Normally, you would never ever do this in pure White Forest because your insurance for Woes resolving is that you have a level 4 engrave that you can summon out in response to your own Woes so that you can bring out a Silvera, usually, to eclipse the field, or to bring out another Arciela so you can search, for example, a Veiler if you need a different type of interaction or the Silvera is not very effective. However, I don't have access to Woes, so getting rid of that resource allows me to keep holding this hidden knowledge of the X-Ryzeal in my hand a little bit longer and then make a rank 4. And now I'm thinking the chances of him having a 4th hand trap are incredibly low, and I know that it is not Ash. I know that because he did not use Ash on LZ and also hand trapped me early. So there's no way that he has held Ash for, this Duo Drive. Then I activate Duo Drive and he scoops. So this shows that, with a hand, you can play through a lot of hand traps arguably more effectively than before, and I haven't even used everything in my hand yet. So there's playing through 3 hand traps. Now let me show you against Ryu-Ge. So this is also Crossover Breakers format. Here I have box LZ, and I have so this is also an example of like a statistically normal hand, although again drawing specifically LZ and box together is I guess technically lucky. But, you know, having a single Ryzeal card, 2 power spells, and then the rest engine is very normal. We just don't want to draw the cross or the plugin. So here I send the soldier, I draw the Ryu-Ge, the soldier comes out, it searches an X, and so now I have given up the knowledge that I am on some kind of Ryzeal package, but I didn't want to search something else because I didn't want to add the Sylvie, because then I would be committing to normal summoning the Sylvie, which means I'm not normal summoning the ice. However, maybe you could argue that I'm playing incorrectly here because I am giving up this information too early in a game 1 situation, and I should have searched the Sylvie anyhow, and I still have a tank that can be sent off of the ice Ryzeal, and I can go into do a drive later. Anyhow, I summon the Ryu-Ge, I send the tank, I bring out the tank, I make the Arciela here, and I send the Tails to search for the woes. So I get back the Tails, so my resource game is looking great. And again, we're in this scenario where the tank can easily bring back the LZ. I have zero need for a Stellar whatsoever, and the tank does exactly that. And I sequenced this incorrectly because I think what I should have done here is I should just have used the Tails and had that in the grave so that I could make Diabell before committing to the Ryzeal main deck monsters. So I think I played this wrong here. And so anyhow, I normal summon the ice, which specials the sword, and the sword gives me another ice. So the great thing about having multiple X's and ices is that not only do you have a higher chance of opening them, but your crackback is so much better because you can now play these on your own turn after your opponent plays. Okay, so here I activate the Tails finally, and then go into the Diabell to add back the Tails, which I should have done before. And now I have 3 level 4s on field, 2 of which are Ryzeal monsters. So here I make the Duo Drive, but I don't want to use this card without making Star Liege, and so I get 2 level 4s out. And here I'm just showing you that you also can make Rafflesia if you were playing the Gravediggers, because it's very similar. It's worse into Imperm, but it still works against, you know, like Nib or whatever other type of hand trap, and it also works with Plasma Hole. But you can imagine that this is a Star Liege basically for the purposes of the combo. And then I use the Duo Drive, and I know he doesn't have Ash because he did not Ash my LZ, which is basically like mandatory to Ash. So here I detach, and I get the cross and the plugin, and so now I can use the special summon these because I haven't special summoned them off their own effect. And it's not like what's that there's a deck I can't remember right now where you if you use the effect, Centurion, where if you use their effects you can't special summon it. You know, the level of power creep here is pretty crazy, because even though you use the effects, you can still special summon them. And then go into the Detonator and attach the Aggregator, and now we can we have 2 cards we can set here. We have the cross and we have the plugin. So here the opponent is playing Ryu-Ge, and I'm pretty sure that they can't beat Detonator without non-engine. So he searches for some of the like the continuous spells, and I'm pretty sure he just wants to bait the Detonator, but there's no reason for me to do anything here because these give their monsters effects, and he hasn't even put anything on board yet, so there's no reason for me to do anything. And then he just scoops. So I mean, this deck is bad, but yeah. Okay, then I will show you against, I believe this was Bystial Control, except there's no control and there are very few Bystials because he passes turn on a branded regain. Now, if you're like gonna complain about the quality of gameplay, listen, when ranked comes out, you can complain, but ranked is not out yet. So this is just like, you know, the quick play best of 1 format. So here we activate box, we set the soldier and the tank, we LZ send soldier, we search a Stellar, he Magnamuts the soldier, and then he can put that back for a draw. So I talents to Peep Hand, and he has this is not going to show up here, I think it is in this log, Santa Claus, Fualos, Called by, and Econ. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm just setting up a Detonator as my main boss monster, he can't have Santa Claus. He can have other stuff, but I don't want him to have the Santa Claus, is what I decided. And then I'm like, okay, well, he has nothing else to stop me, so I'm just going to do whatever I want. I send a tank for the Ryu-Ge to get a draw. tank can bring out the Esteller, which can give me the Sylvie, which can search the woes, and the Arciela sends the woes to search the tails. So my resource economy is looking great. My Diabell adds back a talents, although maybe that should have been a super poly just to be sure on his turn. And then I make the Duo Drive here, and we search for whatever we want. We can summon the Ice, normal summon to bring out the Sword, which gives us more follow-up. We go for the Detonator, and then he scoops. The last thing that I'll quickly show, I believe I was just testing out some hands here, so this is not against the real player, is that even with awkward hands where you normal summon a Sylvie, which is not like the worst thing in the world, but you don't typically want to start that way. You know, you could go Tails, search for LZ, send whatever, like a soldier, even if you don't have box. And then you can search the box, and the box still gives you like good resource. And so now you can make Arciela and bring out the tank. And now what you'll notice in this scenario is that you have some choices to make depending on what's in your hand. You could go for Duo Drive here if you think your opponent, you know, doesn't have hand traps or is on power spells or whatever. You could also tank, bring back the LZ to go for the Diabell if you can continue playing with other stuff in your hand. So here I do that. I make the Diabell and I add back. And so here I haven't used the Rusia from hand, so I use the Rusia. I send the Goat, which is absolutely phenomenal against Detonator. And here we can make the Star Liege. And the cool thing about this deck is that we haven't committed anything yet with the Ryzeal cards. So now I can Sylvie shuffle back the Arciela, which, you know, you could say that maybe I shouldn't be doing this because it makes woes possibly not live, depending on what happens later. But you always have the Diabell as like, you could Diabell, bring out Zapper Shrimp, turn it into something else, and now you have another material engrave. So you can actually still woes. So this does not break your combo. It just makes it so that there could be scenarios where the woes isn't as like brainless, and you have to think a little bit more about how you're sequencing your plays. So we shuffle back Arciela to bring out the Sylvie, and then I summon X by dumping Aggregator, which means I'm now locked into rank 4s from the extra deck. And at this point, I make the Duo Drive, and I wanted to show this also just to mention something that's very important. If you summon Duo Drive here, this card gives you your monsters 100 attack for each material it has. Star Liege says, while this XYZ summoned monster is on the field, your opponent cannot target monsters you control with 2,000 or more attack with card effects. Also, they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. This doesn't just protect XYZ monsters, it just has to be XYZ summoned. This does not need materials for this effect to apply. So right now, as it stands, he cannot target or destroy a single monster on my entire field because the Duo Drive is boosting its attack by 200. So usually what you would like to do is you would detach with Duo Drive's effect the materials from the Star Liege, because this is like Gigantic Sprite in that sense, and leave its own materials so that your board is completely protected. It's not like there's going to be some weird cheese where they like imperm the Star Liege first and then imperm your Duo Drive or whatever. However, there are awkward situations where, because you're not playing a full Ryzeal deck, you may want to have a Ryzeal monster engraved for your plugin to be live. So here I detach the X Ryzeal and something else from this, that makes it to where this does not have 2,000 attack. So this card is now only protecting my other monsters, but not itself. Okay, and now I special summon the Sword and I search for the Ice. The Ice sends the Soldier, which, remember, it does trigger this, but I've already used the Soldier. And now the Detonator can attach the Aggregator from my grave, and that's kind of like a typical field here. So you have a very easy way into a protected Duo Drive and Detonator with a Diabell, and then you usually will have a woes set up with plugin. I also just wanted to show you this replay because there is an argument for playing one plugin instead of cross, or vice versa, because since Duo Drive searches for 2 cards, you often can search for example, just the plugin and then another monster, and that monster may be what you need to continue playing to have the last material to make a Detonator. So yeah, and I feel like I'm now going to give my kind of like final thoughts on this for now. Is if you look at what is in the extra deck and the main deck, playing these bricks, so 2 bricks if we're going first, 3 if we're going second, because now we're going to include woes. I just don't think that this is acceptable. Like, when you play pure Snake Eyes and you have to play Temple, you have to play Snake Eyes Diabell, you have to hope to not draw Poplar, you have to hope to not have awkward combinations like Poplar and Bonfire and all this type of stuff. Like, you know that it's just a matter of time before you draw hands that are unplayable, or they're so bad that they lose to things so quickly. And having these types of cards in your deck, like even just 3 of them, is really not good. So do you accept the trade-off of much more ceiling far greater insulation for your detonator, but you will draw bricks sometimes, or do you take them out? I'm not sure. Right now, I think that you have to play woes, and you don't have to play both cross and plug-in, but you do have to play one of them, I think. So I think that you could play something kind of like this, where you would take the cross out and you would play that for when you're going first, which does mean that you are far more liable to get nibbed if your opponent has nib. And also you don't want to just put in the Rafflesia and the Gravediggers because you're taking out one brick for another brick. And then here I would probably put in a tank or another power spell. So that is my current thoughts on this deck. I'm probably going to fine-tune the ratios a little bit more, and when rank comes out, I will be playing this deck on ladder to give you some better quality gameplay. If you have any comments or suggestions or critiques, please let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and feel free to join the Discord if you'd like.